Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here and welcome to another episode of Army Testing Logs. With the announcement of Silence and Fury DLC last week, I thought this week might as well just do some Beastmen action. And here we are with a generic Beastlord. He's basically a discounted version of Kazarek, but he's also very good in other roles. Yes, he does not have the damage potential as Kazarek, he doesn't have the damage buff for himself or the damage resistance ability, but he has really good buffing potential for his army. Coming in with Horn of the First Beast and Apocalyptic Vision, he can provide a whopping 48 melee attack for every single unit around him, essentially doubling their melee attack and turning him into killing machines. So to complement his damage buffing ability, we have Gorbul here. A really good melee combatant, basically anti-everything. With damage buff to himself, Banner of the Fallen King, and Deadly Onslaught, he can output some serious melee damage if he gets buffed in terms of attack stats. And that is exactly what the Beastlord does. Also, the Gorbul comes in with his own damage buffing, attack buffing ability, with Slaughterer's Call, a little bit more constant ability as long as he's in melee. So a really nice complement in just, if you have these guys together, you can have a, 57 melee attack buff. So it's really significant. And we also have the Brave Shaman of Wild here, continuing the melee buffing theme. We don't have summons here because it's too expensive, but what we do have is a rather neglected spell, Mantle of Garok, providing that 50% weapon damage buff for both base weapon and armor-piercing weapon damage. And also, more importantly, the 40 melee attack. So anything that got buffed by this ability will hit like a truck, with only, a 30 armor debuff drawback, but you're Beastman, come on, you don't care about armor. Anyways, for the rest of the build, we have a whole line of Goreherd with shields, with a couple Angor Raiders at the back. Sons of Goros, these guys are fast and armor-piercing light cavalry. Really good at targeting monsters and just stopping them from getting away. And over here at the far flank, we have a whole bunch of Chaos Warhounds, a couple with poison and a couple Tentacles. As for our opponent today, yes, we have the Lizardmen here, the nemesis of the DLC. Chameleon Skinks, we have a bunch of skin cohorts in the front, a couple Saurus Spears at the back, more skin cohorts, and a couple feral cold ones for mobility. For the monstrosity and the major killing power, we have a couple Kroxigors, great against Beastmen Infantry due to their anti-infantry role as well as their fear. And we have this feral Carnosaur here, great to kill monsters, while also we have Krogar here, coming in with Hand of the Gods. A great shotgun ability, also with his other typical buffs. And for the rest of the leadership, we have a Skink Chief here, ready to do some poking with his Blow Dart, as well as a Skink Priest coming in with Lore of Beast. Now, with the army comps completed, let's have a look at the battle itself. Now, with the Vanguard deployed Chameleon Skinks, these Chaos Warhounds were in charge range, so they went in, charged the Chameleon Skinks, tried to take off a few models before they get countercharged by the Skink cohorts, and now quickly pulled back, taking a bit losses, HP damage from the blow darts, but managed to kill off a few models of the Chameleon Skinks, while the rest of the army of the Beastmen just roll forward, and Goreherd with shields should trade efficiently with Skink cohorts. They will beat them in melee. As the Goreherd pin the Skink in place, the main blob is kind of pushing forward, with Gorok's men Reapers accompanying Gorbul, Beastlord, and the Brave Shaman. They are trying to push through the gap and get into the meteor part of the Lizardman army. And as you can see, the Lizardman player countercharge with Saurus Spears and Kroxigors, now engaging melee combat, and as you can see here, buffing up the Gorok's Man Reapers with the massive attack buffs. The Beastmen were able to do some quick damage on the Kroxigors and just melted them, as well as these Saurus Spears just taking damage in return. On the far flank, some feral cold ones and Skink cohort overextended, so they're swarmed by hounds and Sentinels and now getting quickly pushed away. But in the middle, the Lizardman army is not holding at all. with Gorok's Reapers, despite taking massive damage from the counter charge, they were basically able to break apart the Kroxigors and the Skin cohorts. Now, the Feral Carnosaur and Krogar try to charge in to do some damage, but Gorbul, with Deadly Onslaught pop, managed to do some significant damage on the duelist of the Lizardmen. Already less than half health, he has to pull back as the Saurus Spears around him buckled, with only the Feral Manticore holding back the enemy in place. Over here, with the Lizardmen infantry out of place, trying to flank around and overrun the Angor Raiders and get into the middle of the Beastmen army, the Chameleon Skinks are rather exposed and now swarmed by hounds. But luckily for them, Krogar and Carnosaur are ready to countercharge and terrify away the Chaos Warhounds. But still, nothing is holding for the Beastmen in the middle, and now Sons of Goros are able to charge and catch up with Krogar, pinning him in place, allowing characters like Gorbul and Beastlord to catch up and surround him. But over here, the left flank is essentially non-existent for the Beastmen, as the Skin cohorts, Saurus Spears, and Kroxigars are just rushing forward, chopping away with Angor Raiders, and while the Centaurs are trying to block off the influx of Lizardman units, they are also taking massive damage in return. A second Manticore summon has gone down, but Krogar, surrounded by loads of characters as well as Gorok's Reapers, he is not surviving this onslaught. And now with the Feral Manticore dive down, trying to snipe out Gorbul, as well as the Carnosaur coming in, is basically an essential melee blob grind, but with Apocalyptic Vision popped again. Gorbul and the Gorok's Reapers have nothing to fear and slowly cutting up this Feral Manticore. And now, let's have the game pause a bit. You can see here, Mantle of Gorok is super effective in just enhancing armor-piercing melee combat. Just look at the massive weapon strength Gorbul is having right now. With every chunk, he can basically take away a huge part of the Feral Manticore and Feral Carnosaur HP, and with all the infantry surround, he doesn't take a lot of damage from the counter attacks. Anyways, let's get the battle continue, and yeah, the Feral Manticore and the Feral Carnosaur just got melted in this blob, while the rest of the Lizardman army is pretty much scattered around. Skin cohorts might be trying to firing in, but everything in here has decent armor, maybe not a Brave Shaman, but Gorok's Reapers doesn't really care. And yeah, Gorbul having that 15% missile resistance and also 100 armor. He also takes minimal damage from Chameleon Skinks attacks. And the influx of Lizardmen is now plugged up by a swarm of Centaurs, just pure numbers overloading their units. Saurus Spears are buckling from a double Goreherd slaughter, and yeah, basically that's pretty much it for the Lizardman player. The Skink Chief over here, surrounded by Sons of Goros, will be slowly escorted off the battlefield. All the Centaurs are just running down Chameleon Skinks, everything is routing, and yeah, victory goes to the Beastmen. So before we go into the army performances, I would like to thank you for watching the video. If you do enjoy it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, as I'll be regularly uploading content about Total War Warhammer 2 online multiplayer, tips and strategies, wild builds for different factions, or just general battle replays. If you have some replays that you're proud of or you want to showcase, feel free to join my Discord and submit your replay over there, or send me an email. I'll be sure to check them out and see if I can make them into video and showcase them on my channel. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's have a look into the unit performances. Beastlord, as you can see here, didn't really do much damage, as he's mostly there for attack stats support. Same for the Brave Shaman, providing the Gorok of Reaper, upping the damage potential for the unit close to him. So as a result, Gorbul and the Gorok's Reapers have really good value, with 1,600 on Gorbul and over 2,000 on the Gorok's Reapers. They basically eaten up most of the monsters from the Lizardmen. As for the rest of the infantry, they did okay, performed pretty decently against Skink's chaff. Same for the Angorators, did some decent shooting, got some decent value out of it, but nothing too substantial. Centaurs did okay in just swarming skinks and running down chameleons. Sons of Goros surrounding Krogar, pinning him in place so that Gorbel and Krogsman Reapers can catch up and pin him down and finish him off. Chaos Warhounds, always great for chasing off mobility skirmishers, so eating up a bunch of chameleon skinks, they got pretty decent value out of it. As for the Lizardman army, Krogar getting devoured by Gorbel and Krogsman Reapers, not getting the value he deserves. The Skink Priest summoned a couple of Manticores, not sure do those get his value he needed, but he did something. Skink Chief, a very cost-efficient skirmish hero, getting a 600 value, but for the rest of the Lizardman army, the Skink cohorts as a chaff infantry didn't really do well. The Saurus with Spears getting swarmed by Beastmen infantry, overloaded with Santigors, and just superior attack stats from the Beastmen didn't really do too well. Chameleon Skinks got some pretty good value for their cost, but with the abundance of light cavalry and disruption units from the Beastmen, they weren't able to fully realize their potential. Feral Cult Ones, not exactly a good pick for this matchup, as there's little armor piercing needed against weak units, as most of their units are basically unarmored. It's cheap mobility, yes, but I feel like it's better to just bring some Cult Ones with spears. And as for the monster department, they really didn't do much here, getting minimal value for all of them due to being surrounded by Krogsman Reapers, a really good anti-large infantry armor piercing unit, as well as just getting hacked open by Gorbel. That's basically it for the post-battle analysis. Now let's go into the army breakdown and see how exactly this build works. So now let's have a closer look at how this build works. We have a whole support-oriented leadership core, with the Beastlord coming in with Apocalyptic Vision and Horn of the First Beast most importantly, but usually I just recommend bringing him fully kitted. Basically, Horn of the First Beast as well as Apocalyptic Vision giving a massive 48 melee attack buff to units nearby. Really important here, allowing your melee units to hit like an absolute truck and slaughter your enemies with their double attacks. Now, the other abilities, not so much as adding in melee attack and giving them better hit chance, but every little bit helps. Bloodlust coming in with 25% armor piercing weapon damage buff allows your units to hit harder. It's a single target spell, but when you put it on Bestigor or Gorbel, where they have a huge weapon damage in terms of armor piercing, it will be really useful. And also Totem of Rust. When you're bringing stuff like Ungor or Gore Hurts, they don't have that much armor piercing, but with a little bit of armor debuff, every little bit helps to whittle down your enemy with your unarmor piercing melee attacks. Of course, you want to bring Gorbel for a really reliable anti-large armor piercing melee combatant. His melee attack stats and defense are not that high in general, but that's why you bring him with a Beastlord. With that whooping 48 melee attack buff, he will be landing his hits consistently, and also he has his own area of effect buff, Slaughterer's Call, a consistent 9 melee attack, 8% charge bonus, and 8 leadership buff to all units nearby. So basically, he will turn into a killing machine, slaughtering large and small units alike. And of course, he has some really useful abilities to buff up his weapon damage, Deadly Onslaught, a very typical melee combatant buff, as well as Banner of the Fallen King, providing a 12% weapon damage buff to himself whenever he has high HP. Axe of Man, it causes terror and turns him unbreakable, but it's more of an optional item, so pick it at your own discretion. Now for the spellcasting department, you want a Brave Shaman for his very, very useful but often neglected spell, Mantle of Garok. giving that 50% weapon strength buff, coming at a cost of 30 armor, but also providing that 40 melee attack. This is a very self-contained spell that you can just basically use on its own. Of course, you have a similar spell called Occam's Mind Razor in the Shadows department, but the thing is, it only buffs up weapon damage, and it doesn't give you a higher hit chance in terms of melee combat. So what happens is, if you're bringing Occam's Mind Razor, and yes, you can overcast it to get area of effect, but you need to time it really well with the Beastlord's attack buffs to actually make it worth it. And given that the Horn of the First Beast has a 120-second cooldown, it might be difficult to make Occam's Mind Razor work properly, as you can just pop this Mantle of Gorok every minute on a single unit and let them do their work. And as a Beastman, you don't really have that many key units. Normally you have a couple monstrous units like Gorbel or Minotaurs, or you just dump it on a Bestigor to provide that extra armor-piercing damage. Basically, Mantle of Gorok is more than enough, especially with the support of the Beastlord's attack buffs. As for the rest of the spells, I personally like Brave Scream as well as Traitorkin, providing a really nice high damage anti-armor breath attack that can really nuke up some heavy cavalry or infantry alike. This doesn't exist in most of the other breath spells available, and Brave Scream can be really important in just turning the tide if you have a serious block fight around your leadership core. As for anti-cavalry spells, we have the Traitorkin. Now if you overcast it, it can give you a whooping 48% speed debuff and also do pretty decent damage against cavalry units. You basically have a blob fight, the cavalry blobbing on top of your units, and then you dump this direct damage spell down and watch them getting slowed down and getting dragged down by hounds, Manticores surround them, and getting chopped up by follow-up infantry and whatnot. And normally, for Lore of Wild, you'd bring Savage Dominion, but this time we're totally not bringing that because it's very expensive and you don't really need a summon to make this build work. What you need is the massive buffs from the Beastlord and the Gorbel to provide support to your enemy, to your killy targets, and let your damage dealers finish the job. And that's why we're bringing Bestigor Herd for the infantry department, because Bestigor, no matter the Regiment of Renowned version or just the regular version, has really good armor-piercing weapon strength. They can really pack a punch against any enemy, armored or not, and with the massive 48 melee attack bonus from the Beastlord, they can and will slaughter any enemies. If you do a little bit of quick math, 35 melee attack plus this really nice useful ability here called Primal Fury, unique to Beastmen Infantry, they have a 40 melee attack baseline, and then coupled with the 48 melee attack from the Beastlord and 9 extra attack from the Gorbel's Slaughterer's Call, you have over 90 melee attack. And not even Chosen with Sigvald's Stand and Fight can actually compete against these kind of melee attack. As for the rest of the army, it's pretty much flexible and you build it however you like as your situation demands. Personally, I like bringing Ungor Raiders and some Manticores and Hounds because you need to counter missile builds. Ungor Raiders, a very cost-efficient skirmisher, can counter skirmish cavalry, while Manticores and Hounds will chase down skirmishers on foot and just devour them and hunt them down. Of course, you can also throw in something, say, like a Minotaur. Personally, I love Butchers of Kalkengard due to their regeneration, but it's not necessary. It's perfectly fine if you just go all in on something, say, like Manticore Cavalry and bring in another Hound like I just did in the Lizardman replay. But yeah, that's basically it for the army composition for this build. Let's have a little bit talk about how to tactically apply this in practical situations. To play this build as usual, you want to bunch up your key targets together and make sure their area of effect abilities can support each other. And now over here, Franz dived down into combat trying to save his Knights of Blazing Sun, but the close presence of Sons of Goros means that he's now pinned down by a bunch of Centaurs. And Gorbel has now reached over for melee combat, about to hunt him down with his Baal axe. Now, with Sons of Goros having cavalry mass pinning him down, he's not gonna escape easily. That means Gorbel, despite slower than Franz, is now able to easily hack apart and reach over to him and do a number on his health. And as you can see here, let's pause it a bit. Franz is already routing down to about 1/3 of his HP, and Gorbel, as you can see here, no apocalyptic vision as it has worn off due to its shorter duration, but with Horn of the First Beast, Mantle of Gorok, Bloodlust, Deadly Onslaught all stacked on top of each other, he now has a whopping 800 weapon strength, and that's not counting in the charge bonus as well as the anti-large. Also, he has a whopping 109 melee attack. Basically, anything will get chopped apart by his massive attack, especially Franz is on Death Claw right now, meaning that he also get an extra bonus versus large against Franz. 30 attack, so 139 attack and additional charge bonus against Franz. And now Franz is basically at his last legs here. With a couple more hits and he'll be finished off, but of course he's trying to pull out. Sons of Goros not letting him do so by trying to chase after him, but still he has enough mass to pull out. One last hit from Gorbel, but there's not enough units to block him down. He's running, but of course Sons of Goros, being 95 speed as a light cavalry unit, will be able to catch up on him and prevent him from taking off. Of course, that doesn't mean that Gorbel can catch up, but still. This is very important as the faster cavalry will keep Franz routing, and that's basically spells the end of the leadership of the Empire. Another way to use this army build is to buff up your infantry. Over here, some Mirror Guard got caught by some Butchers of Kalkengod, and now followed up by Bestigor herds. They're having a really hard time and getting just hacked apart, butchered by the Butchers. And now, with the characters joining the fight, things are not looking good for the Chaos over here. But more Chaos Warriors and Chosen with Halberds rush in, trying to stem the tide. But seeing how Bestigor Herd actually is really good on the charge, with a massive charge bonus, buffed up by Primal Fury, and now 73 melee attack buffed up by Horn of the First Beast. Even got popped on a Bloodlust by the Beastlord. Now they're just hacking these Chaos Warriors apart. The Chosen with Halberds are not having a good time as well. Already taking massive damage on the impact, now slowly getting grind down by the combination of monsters and armor-piercing infantry, as well as heroes. And yeah, Horn of the First Beast just really useful in buffing up your Beastmen infantry, allowing them to overpower even the Chosen with Halberds. Now this unit of Chosen got buffed up by Cascading Fire Cloak earlier, but just not enough, as it eventually worn off, and now it is subject to a Bestigor herd buffed up by Mantle of Gorok, going up to 90 melee attack, 60 weapon strength. The Chosen of Halberds only having 56 or ordinary melee defense, and they are not going to hold for long. Especially when they rely on a lot of their armor to tank out the damage, but now with the armor piercing from Bestigor herds, the armor is not that important. Now the Chaos Sorcerer of Fire is buckling, the Chosen is already down to half health, a little bit help from Sigvald with stand or die, but still the Mantle of Gorok still managed to push the Bestigor herds attack well over that. Of course it has worn off now, but that doesn't really matter anymore, as the Gorbel, Butchers and whatnot has already significantly whittled down the elite infantry of the Chaos. Of course, Prince Sigvald will do a pretty huge number on the Beastlord, but once the Gorbel pulled out, rest a bit, and got buffed by another wave of combination of Apocalyptic Vision, Horn of the First Beast, and Mantle of Gorok, he can and will trash Sigvald pretty easily. Of course, you can't talk about an army without discussing the strengths and weaknesses of the build. Over here, we are facing a really ridiculous Dark Elf build. The reason why I say so is because my opponent just brought a bunch of flying single entities, left them hanging in the sky, and all his infantry hidden in the bushes. Now, he did expose his whereabouts of the army by pushing out the sorcerers and summon a Manticore, but now we have 4 Manticores in the sky and a master who is also an anti-large armor-piercing single combatant, who are ready to rush down and rush my Beastlord or caster. And that is exactly what my opponent did. Dropping down with the Manticore, trying to snipe out the Beastlord, but he's a melee character on foot, so as he is knocked down, he will be able to be invincible for a short amount of time. And now the counter-strike happens with Sons of Goros rushing in, trying to surround all these Manticore units, preventing them from checking off or pulling out. Bestigor units coming in, trying to body block for the lords. It's a big old mess in the fight right now. But the Gorbull, being a really nice anti-large armor-piercing melee combatant, is basically ruining the life of this one summoned Feral Manticore. And the rest of the Feral Manticores are basically bogged down in Rampage. Yes, the Gaze of Cain is a really good melee buffing spell, but the thing is, with the combination of Horn of the First Beast and Apocalyptic Vision, the Beastmen units have much higher melee attack buff compared to those of the Dark Elves. And yes, they have some pretty nice weapon strength buffs from Crone Hellebron, but it is no match for the numbers advantage of the Beastmen. As you can see here, the Crows of Cain are now taking massive damage. This one Feral Manticore summoned, but already routing, and the rest of the Manticore will soon follow suit as the Sons of Goros are now beating down on these Feral Manticores. Holy crap, the Gorbull, buffed up by the Mantle of Gorok, now up to 109 melee attack, 500 something weapon strength. I forgot to pop out the weapon strength buffs on him because it's just one hell of a mess. But now, yes, the Feral Manticore is basically gone. This one took some damage, and unfortunately, Gorbull still can be knocked around flying despite being a large monster, which is a shame. But right now, with the Sons of Goros hot on pursuit, Crone Hellebron is not leaving the ground, and Gorbull caught up with Foe Seeker and Deadly Onslaught popped. He is getting definitely slaughtered. Oh, she is getting slaughtered, and now, with a bunch of Sons of Goros escorting her off the battlefield, there's nothing that the Dark Elves can do to save her, as there's nothing that can bog down and body block for Crone Hellebron. While this master trying to get back into the sky, but here comes the Poison Warhounds charging in, just surrounding him and using that poison to debuff his speed. And now the Gorbull and Beast Shaman, the Shaman Sorcerer, the Beast Shaman, Bray Shaman, is now just beating him down. And yeah, that's basically it for my opponent. Basically, this build has great melee potential and is great against any sniping attempts. You have Sons of Goros or any Centacle unit that can easily bog down your opponent's flying monsters. And of course, you can on top of that add in some Chaos Warhounds, debuff your opponent with your poison and slow them down, allowing the Gorbull, while being fast, not as fast as cavalry, to catch up with his mighty hoofs. Also, it can be excellent in playing against melee blob fights, as you can see in the previous Chaos replay, just easily grind down units after unit of Chosen with halberds. Now, with the powerful melee strength of this build showcase, let's look at weaknesses. So this build's biggest weakness is skirmishing cavalry. Being a fast, mobile archer unit, they can output missile damage while eluding the grasp of your mobile units. Yes, your warhounds are fast, but the missile cavalry are usually as fast, if not faster. Especially when they have poison attacks that debuff your speed of the hounds. And over here, successfully breaking the infantry, but the problem is the skirmish cavalry are just sitting back, throwing their arrows in the way of the butchers of Kalkengod, slowly whittling down their health as they are not a highly armored units. While the cavalry and infantry as well as the hero corps are just trying desperately to hold back the Gorbull and hero corps, which they are doing quite effectively. Paladin with the anti-large will be able to work down the Gorbel with low melee defense, especially with the help of the Fey Enchantress. And the Koroksman Reapers, not having any shield whatsoever, will be eventually whittled down by the mass of arrows from the Peasant, which is a shame way to go, honestly. And the problem with Beastmen missile units is they usually have an inferior range to other archer units. So Manticores only have 70 range compared to 125 range on these Peasant yeoman archers. And yeah, you basically have to keep them back and use something else like Ungor Raiders to screen these missile cavalry, while your Sentinels will be pulled back and reserve their health and ammo for something more important and more fragile to their attacks, say like these Knights of the Realm here. But yeah, the failure of my hounds to actually catch these Peasant Bowmen and Yeoman Archers really turned the tide against me at this point, because I basically have nothing to counter their archers right now, as my opponent just did a really good job screening for the Peasant Bowmen with the men-at-arms with polearms, as well as the Peasant Bowmen and Mounted Yeoman Archers having decent target picking prioritization, basically whittling down my Sentinels and blocking them off, as well as blocking my Chaos Warhounds before they can even get close and engage in melee combat against the Peasant Bowmen. So yeah, but thankfully, if you bring the right build with Beastmen, you can still counter these missile cavalry and missile infantry and whatnot properly, as you have a lot of disruption tools. Hounds, Harpies, Sentinels that are in the melee variant, not the throwing axes, can all be pretty effective in just screening, pushing off missile cavalry, and getting into the back lines. Just that you need to be on top of your micro, which I totally did not able to do so over here, as the archer line are still alive throughout the late game, and the Mounted Yeoman Archers are able to expend their ammo however they like. Of course, another minor problem with all Beastmen build is the lack of healing. Without healing, you have less margin for error, as you can't heal back up your units, and of course you can't sustain as long in prolonged melee fights. But that's basically a same problem for any chaotic faction, and it's more of a matter of practice and adaptation to the playstyle. So in the long run, this should not be a big problem to this build. Overall, this is still a very powerful melee-centric build, with powerful melee potential in both sniping enemy lords and monsters, as well as fighting, grinding in blobs. You can just basically buff up your units, buff up their stats through the roof, and turning them into absolute killing machines and slaughter all the enemies who dare to defy the Dark Gods. Beastlord, being a very cost-efficient buff machine, will definitely help against any kind of situation, especially when you consider that you need both Franz and a warrior priest to provide the same amount of attack buffs that a single Beastlord who costs less than 1,500 to actually put out. And yeah, with that kind of cost efficiency, you can save up a lot of funds to adjust your army. You can also throw in and switch out a bunch of units, as there are no essential units other than the leadership core and maybe some Bestigors. So what happens is you can go all in on, say, Sentinels or Hounds, or you can just bring a bunch of infantry like Gore Herds and not bringing Ungors because you have extra funds, and have a rather flexible army. Of course, just like all other melee-centric builds, you have missile weaknesses because you simply do not have the range and missile components to counter them, but as a Beastman, you can totally make up for this kind of weaknesses, because you do have a lot of mobility tools, Hounds, Harpies, Sentinels. They're all very good at disrupting your opponent's missile units, and with the Ungor Raiders screening skirmishing cavalry, you should be able to deal with those pesky archers and gunners or whatnot with relative ease as long as you micro them properly. So that's basically it for today. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Itch, signing out.